Going live in a second.
I
Just
think we are now live. So, hello everyone, and welcome to our second debate of the UJS presidential elections for UJS President 2024 to 2025. Today we'll be talking about Israel engagement, campaigning issues, and fighting anti-Semitism. We are joined by our three candidates in alphabetical order: Sami Burkhoff, Samantha Cass, and Josh Cohen. Voting is already open for UJS president and will be open until next Thursday. That is Thursday, the 7th of December at 11:59 p.m. If you haven't yet received a voting link, please go to ujs.org.uk/join to receive your voting link. We're going to start off with some opening statements, which will focus around Israel engagement, fighting anti-Semitism, and campaigns issues. We're going to start off reverse to how we did it at the first debate. So start off with Josh before moving on to Samantha and then to Sami. So Josh, if you want to start, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name's Josh Cohen, and I'm running to be your next UJS president. When it comes to the topic of Israel anti-Semitism campaigns, we often hear a lot of buzzwords being thrown around, but my credentials on anti-Semitism are clear. My plans to fight anti-Semitism and make campuses safe for Jews are clear. I explained these in the last hustings, and you can have a look at my Instagram for more. When it comes to Israel engagement specifically, my focus is on students, not governments, and especially not foreign governments. There's been a lot of conversation over the years about how UJS should engage with the most recent Israeli government, and in fact, whether we should engage at all. And this has only become more complicated since October the 7th. I feel at this time we've lost track of our fundamental aim: supporting and enabling students in engaging with Israel. I mentioned UJS in the last hustings, the World Union of Jewish Students. One of my policies is that I'll strengthen ties to one of their members, the NUIS, the National Union of Israeli Students, and work with them to best support Israeli students under our care. As well as this, by working to increase acceptance of the IHRA definition by universities and unions, something I did in Nottingham, we can fight back against the horrific anti-Semitic and xenophobic abuse both Israeli and Jewish students have faced, particularly in the last weeks. But I also want to bring back the joy to Israel engagement. There's a lot of division over the subject, but we've learned, especially recently, how to unite over the things we love. I want to see Jews and Israelis on campus celebrating Jewish and Israeli music, art, food, culture, even language. My plans for a diverse, robust Israel engagement fellowship will see students from across the political and religious spectrum and across the UK and Ireland celebrating what's amazing about Israel and enabling other students to do the same. It will create a healthy, productive space to have the difficult conversations while promoting unity and encouraging us to share in the things we love about Israel. It's been difficult and especially complicated these last few weeks, but under my presidency, Israel engagements on campus will bounce back stronger than ever.
Thank you, Josh. Samantha, if you're up next, you have 2 minutes. You might begin.
Hi, I'm Samantha. Hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm a final year history student at the University of Leeds, and I'm standing to be your next UJS president. In times like these, Jewish students need a president who cares about each and every person, someone committed to enriching their student experience through actions, not just words. I will bring positive changes to UJS, fostering a safe and inclusive space for all Jewish students across our campuses. Whilst I could spend the next 2 minutes talking to you about Taylor Swift, the most recent Doctor Who episode, or my love for pasta, it is so much more important for me to address the set of unique challenges facing Jewish students as of right now. The rise of anti-Semitism on campus, the frustration formed by the silence from our non-Jewish peers, and the difficulty in not being able to fully participate in student life the way that you want to. I've engaged in conversations with students across the UK and Ireland, hearing their concerns and learning what I can do to make UJS better for them, for you, and for all Jewish students. By enhancing student opportunity, by optimizing UJS operations, and by ensuring proactive advocacy, I will make UJS a place where every voice is listened to and acknowledged. Throughout my university journey, I've been deeply involved in working both with and for fellow students. I've travelled abroad last year, attending a university with limited Jewish representation and activity, so I understand the difficulties in feeling underrepresented. Through my UJS National Collective initiative, I aim to create opportunities for students with similar backgrounds to connect, share experiences, and collaboratively contribute to the UJS community. In my second year, I served as Uni of Chair for my JSOC, working alongside the SU to combat anti-Semitism and provide welfare support. I will continue holding SUs to account, creating workshops that highlight the misconceptions that create modern anti-Semitism, sparking dialogue rather than division. As someone who is mental health first aid trained, I understand the profound impact that mental health has on our overall well-being, and will fund first aid training to SABs and welfare officers on committee.
That's your time up. Sorry.
Sorry, it's okay, don't worry.
Sammy, if you want to go next, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Let me start now.
Hi, I'm Sammy, and I'm running to be your next UJS president. From going to a non-Jewish school to Durham with a small Jewish community, I have always had to fight for mine and other students' Jewish voices, creating a safe and supportive environment for Jewish students. I helped introduce and ran anti-Semitism workshops throughout colleges, and I pushed Durham Students' Union to sign the UJS pledge, which only 5 unis in the UK signed. I have training in CST, RSY, and Maccabi leadership, which demonstrates my capabilities and strength, as well as my passion for our community. Some examples of what I will do next year are: I will start a Kahila magazine and a complement to Aleph, where we will showcase artwork and other creative works from students, as well as shining a light on work from those on friendships and placement. I also have specific plans to widen UJS and actively reach out to those students who are most often isolated from UJS and JSOCs. This includes providing increased funding for sober socials and incentivizing JSOCs to run a wider variety of events to reach out. It's time we recognise that Friday night dinner and a pub trip every 3 weeks is far from the best that we can do. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism is at the forefront of many students' minds right now, and that's why I will deliver anti-Semitism awareness training to at least 100 student unions across the country to ensure that they are equipped to both deal with anti-Semitic incidents when they arise, but also so that they have the ability to build campus environments that are safe for all of us. Finally, I believe that UJS can do a better job of advocating for Jewish students, which is why I will restructure the sabbatical officers, bringing back the Israel engagement officer, as well as introducing a female empowerment officer, so that we can better advocate for Jewish students' specific needs. And this is without me even mentioning my plans for welfare training of committees, pushing NUS to ensure that the important work done in fighting anti-Semitism isn't lost, or any of the other points in my manifesto that I would encourage you to have a look at. As you can see, not only do I have the experience for the job, but I have the most clearly developed and ambitious plans for how best to serve you as president of UJS. So please come and stand strong with Sammy and vote me as your next UJS president.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to some questions. We're going to start off with questions about Israel engagement, then we'll move on to some questions about campaigns and anti-Semitism. Then we'll move on to some last questions more generally about you and your personalities and how you would bring that to be UJS president. To start off, what does Israel engagement mean to you? Starting with Samantha.
Sorry about that. I feel like every student is affected by what happens in Israel. One way or another, many of us have friends, family, ancestry, heritage, and a connection to the land. And the beautiful thing about our British and Irish Jewish communities is our diversity of connections and perspectives. For me personally, I have so much family there, I have friends there, and it's so important for me to be able to explore that and get to visit them and get to meet them and see them. I think it's so important to engage and encourage and foster dialogue between different Jewish students, but also to engage in outreach with non-Jewish students to foster a better understanding about what Israel means to other people. One thing that I think is a really cool initiative is in the past, for other, I think UJS maybe did this, is they created a campaign where a bunch of different students got together and described what Israel meant to them and what it meant to be Jewish and understand Israel. I think that's such an incredible idea as it fosters a whole unique understanding about what Israel means to a wide range of Jewish students. And I think that's an initiative that I would love to push forward.
Thank you. Sammy.
Yeah, so I think with Israel engagement, the way I see it is that there's 2 sides of it. So you want to make sure, and as UJS president, this is something I would do, that students are able to celebrate Israel whilst also critically engaging with it. There's it's the saddest thing to say, but events that happen in Israel immediately affect life on campus, and I think it's so important to allow students to be aware and allow them to engage in whatever way they see fit, whether that's having events like Tel Aviv Takes London, or having a bit more of a political discussion on it. I think that is like the goal of the like SAB role that I want to introduce, where it's like, how can we bring students together to celebrate and to critically engage within Israel? Like I want to empower students to put on their own events, whatever side of like what I've just explained is. Yeah, like I just think it's really important that whatever any Jewish student wants, like it's their own personal connection. And I think like there's two sides of it, which is like the most important thing to acknowledge in the whole, like when talking about Israel.
Thank you. And lastly, Josh.
So sort of picking up on a point that Samantha raised, I think I'm with her on the diversity is so important. The fact is we are a massive umbrella organization for various different JSOCs, various different communities around the country. And I think we need to ensure that when we're engaging in Israel engagement, we're not dictating but enabling. Israel engagement can mean different things to different students. It means making room for the difficult conversations, but like I said in my opening statement, also ensuring that we do promote unity. And I think we also need to be very careful that we don't buy into tropes that diaspora Jews are responsible for the actions of a foreign government. And so that means that I think it's neither UJS's job to condemn nor advocate for a government's actions when it doesn't directly affect Jewish students. And I think we need to be very careful with that when it comes to Israel engagement.
Thank you very much. My next question is, how would you define your relationship with Israel? Starting with Sammy.
Yeah, so like growing up like within Noam and RSY, like that's really like helped establish like the way I like connect with Israel. I have family out there, my auntie and my cousins live there, so like have always loved like going out and visiting them and like seeing them, and like I've always been really like engaged with like understanding what's going on out there. So yeah, like I've like got such like a family connection to it. Like I'd separate it in two sides. Like I have a family connection and like a family friend connection, where that's like how I like have like so much like happy times, like I love going there. And then I also have a bit more of like a critically engaging like side of it, where I've like gone to talks and like gone to understanding it and gone into like conversations to understand like how like what is like going on out there like politically. So I think like I've got like quite a like critical understanding of it, and like a bit more of like a progressive viewpoint and relationship with Israel. Yeah.
Thank you. Josh.
So like Sammy mentioned, and like so many other Jews, I have my kind of close personal connections. In the last hustings, I talked about my grandmother. I have family out there. My grandmother who helped found and lived on a kibbutz in 48. I have close family there. I have close friends there. But there's also that broader element of that shared history and that shared culture that just makes the country feel like something special. And I think is why so many students are so keen to engage with it, and why I'm keen that UJS works as hard as possible to enable that.
And lastly, Samantha.
Yeah, as Sammy and Josh have both said, as I think many other Jewish students on campus have, we all have a close personal connection to Israel, whether that be our family or friends. I've had family that have lived in Israel since around the 1600s, and it's just a really special thing every time I get to go there to visit them and to see them. Again, I also have a connection to Israel, not just by visiting the land, but by talking to other Jewish students and talking to other people and learning more about other people's diverse understandings about the land. Again, opening up dialogue, having open conversations. And I think it's just a great way to meet people and explore other people's identities and to learn more about Jewish students. And for me, that's one of the really special things. I never really went on Israel tour. I went on Lavi for 9 weeks. And that was a fascinating experience for me in year 9 to see life on a kibbutz, to see life in a different way that I'd never seen before. So all of that's very personal to me. And again, I think a lot of other Jewish students have that connection as well.
Thank you. My last question on Israel engagements is that every year UJS tries to bring 3 different speakers to speak on campuses across the UK about Israel engagement. They can be Israeli speakers, or they can be speakers with interesting or unique connections to Israel. If you could choose 3 people, alive or dead, to come to campus next year during your presidency to speak, who would those people be? And briefly, why? We'll start with Josh.
Okay. This is tricky off the top of my head. So again, I think this diversity is important. So I would, alive or dead. You can't do any better than I think a Ben Gurion campus tour would be amazing. It would help us, love him or hate him, it would help us really get to grips with the kind of fundamentals of how Israel was founded. I'd love to hear, sort of following from the success of, and this is kind of going straight to the other end of the spectrum here, following the success of Yachad's speaker tour last year, I would go for looking at kind of looking at bringing in a Palestinian speaker, looking at bringing in, we had someone from East Jerusalem, maybe someone from the West Bank area. And the third one is a little cheeky. I'm not sure if it entirely counts as a speaker tour. I've just mentioned 2 people who would be quite controversial. I think the one uncontroversial thing I'd like to do is building on the success of the Shlichot with their, I know in London they did their kind of they brought in therapy dogs. And I think especially at the moment, as tough as it's been, I'd love to do a therapy dog speaker tour. I think that's something everyone needs right now.
Next, Samantha.
Yeah, I gotta say, I love dogs, so I'm all for that. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to steal one of Josh's answers. But yeah, no, I definitely think Theodore Herzl is an important person. Just to, it might bring controversy, but someone who founded Israel and founder of Zionism, it's very important to, hear a perspective from that person and learn what they have to say. I'm going to go a little bit cheeky for my second one and say someone that's very personal to me. His name is Chaim Perry, and he's an educator and director of a youth village in Israel that managed to bring many Ethiopian Jews to Israel to provide them with a sense of community and a relationship. And he's published a book called The Village Life. And if I could speak about him for like hours on end, I would. I think he's an incredible man, and I think he would be a great person for many different Jewish students to hear from, to hear what he's done for so many Jewish children and Jewish students who want to have a relationship to Israel. I think he has done some wonderful things. And then finally, as Josh said again, I think it's very important to hear from a Palestinian, somebody who, can offer a different perspective to Israel and to learn from their experiences and what they have to say, and shining a light on that as well. Sorry. So.
Thank you. And Sammy?
Yeah, so I think like my first one is kind of like, it, like Samantha said, like something really personal, or kind of all 3. So my first one would be Gal Gadot, just because she was like this icon that got brought to me when I was in like year 8 on Noam, and I just thought she was the coolest person ever. Like taking away from like anything, I just thought like this strong female Israeli woman, like I just thought she was incredible. So I'd want her just because of like, I just want to meet her myself as like one. My second would be like I've had a talk from Solutions Not Sides before, where they brought in, similar to what Josh said, like having a discussion with a Palestinian and an Israeli, and like having a conversation like that and opening the dialogue, I think is really important. So I'd work with Solutions Not Sides to like use their connections and like get them involved to do that. And the third one, I can't remember his exact name, but we had him like zoom into like our pre-camp on RSY a few years ago, where he talked about like Tel Aviv Pride, and like it's awful because I don't remember his name, but I just remember being like amazed by like how incredible what he was saying was, and the fact that like like just like advocating for like LGBTQ plus voices in Israel, and like sharing his experience and like being a part of that community like in Israel, and like how incredible it is in Tel Aviv, but then also the challenges. And I just think that it's so important to like open up that dialogue about it. But yeah, I feel really bad I can't remember his name. I need to work on that.
So, moving off Israel and onto UJS's fight against anti-Semitism. To start with, UJS currently offers anti-Semitism awareness training to student unions, universities, and freshers. We've offered around 100 sessions, just under 100 sessions so far this year. How would you expand and continue this training under your presidency? Starting with Samantha.
I'm really sorry you cut off, so I didn't hear the middle bit of the question. I'm really sorry.
Of course. So UJS currently offers anti-Semitism awareness training to student unions, universities, and freshers. We've done just under 100 training sessions so far this year. How would you expand and continue this training under your presidency?
Right. That's a great question. I think it's really about, I think what UJS have done has been really powerful for a lot of people. And I think continuing that work and holding and creating these workshops, providing resources that are easily accessible to Jewish students as well, and non-Jewish students on the UJS website to engage with, to be able to engage with non-Jewish students on campus about Israel and about anti-Semitism in a non-harmful manner that will be able to encourage dialogue rather than division. And I think having resources on hand for students that have been made available and continuing to do this, not just with student unions, but with, again, young students as well, will foster a better understanding and knowledge on how to speak about these issues, because sometimes we get put in situations that are sometimes unfortunately out of our control. And it can be really difficult to have those conversations with other people when we don't really know exactly what to say. And so making sure that there are resources on hand while simultaneously continuing to run these workshops will be very, very useful. I also think it's important to expand these workshops to ensure that they're made available, not just kind of like in London or Manchester or Leeds, but also wider in kind of remote locations where it can be more difficult for students to be able to attend these workshops necessarily, to make sure that all Jewish students are included, and also that more workshops can be done and be beneficial.
Sammy?
Yeah, so firstly, I want to echo what Samantha said, that I think you guys have done amazing this year. Like, I worked with you guys to get them in Durham, and like we've managed to get to quite a few colleges so far, and like they're going so well, and like we're seeing changes being made. So yeah, I've got in my manifesto, I have a pledge to go to 100 SUs across the country. I think it's just important to push out and like go to communities and go to universities where there's not a JSOC, where there's not as many Jewish students, because there's a reason why Jewish students aren't choosing those universities. And I think that's like a big like problem that like we usually don't think about. Like, why do Jewish students only go to like a few big unis and not as many go to other ones? And I think like having the awareness there where there's less Jewish students is even more important in some cases, because it helps educate people and students who like haven't interacted with as many Jewish people. So I think that like is like my first big one. I think just continuing the push, like we're in an amazing place and we're doing so well, but then yet only 5 SUs signed the pledge, and it's like, why aren't SUs committing to standing up for their Jewish students and standing against anti-Semitism? What is like going wrong? So I think opening the dialogue, pushing more SUs to continue training and training more, because they obviously change each year who's in them, and also like engaging more JSOC committees and Jewish students to run these workshops, because when you get them in place, like they're incredible. Like we've had such amazing feedback so far. So I think just like amplifying what's being done to like another level and pushing it that one step further is really important. And like reaching out to those communities that don't have Jewish students or don't have as many is really like a big point that I want to like work on.
Josh?
So through my work, both sort of within Nottingham and watching sort of as someone being supported by UJS in Nottingham, and also as sort of working on the other side of it through National Council, I've seen one of the big benefits of these sessions is not always necessarily what comes directly from the sessions, but the relationships that SABS and the campaigns team and whoever turns up to deliver these builds with these SUs. I think that can be a sort of side effect or a positive side effect that really reaps rewards further down the line. What I'd look to do is, I'm with Samantha, I think it's important to get Jewish students involved in these as well. I'd keep the sessions, as they are at the moment, but look at having follow-up sessions specifically involving Jewish students, involving the committees, involving kind of Jewish student activists. And that way, not only do we build those relationships between the SABs and either, as in the UJS SABs and the SABs at the SU where they're training, or the staff where they're training, or the freshers where they're training, but we can also help to kind of proactively build those relationships between the committee, between Jewish students, between Jewish activists, because that's something we've done quite well in Nottingham and really reaped the rewards of.
Thank you. My next question: how would you improve UJS's political engagement as UJS president? Starting with Sammy.
Yeah, so I think just like what I said at the beginning about critically engaging, not just with Israel, but with all topics, is really important, and like opening dialogue to be able to do that. I think we're really lucky that we are a democratic like union, and that is like something that we need to like keep doing. So I think holding everyone accountable to motions passed, like holding like, for example, like meeting people with opposed racist views. Like, I think as long as we're like holding people and holding committees to those like motions that we've passed, and like that way, like we're able to open the dialogue, but in a safe and supportive way, and like having spaces to be able to do that, I think is really important. We do it in Durham, like we invite a range of speakers, but as long as they fit, like they're not problematic, we're happy for like to have a range and like open up the dialogue, because there's not one like politics for a student, like no one has one viewpoint, or like each student has a different viewpoint, that's what I meant to say. Like, so I think opening it up and like having a space where people can like communicate and like discuss their own political beliefs, but in a safe, supportive environment, like where we're enabling people to have that dialogue, but in like secure places, so it's not getting out of hand, but listening to each other, understanding where people are coming from. We all have different backgrounds, we all have different political beliefs, but like we all are Jewish students at the end of the day, and like we can unite over that again, like together about that, and I think that's really important. Yeah.
Josh?
So one of the elements of UJS's political engagement that I've been lucky enough to take part in a lot of the time is that we'll often have kind of delegations, groups of students who will meet with particular figures who wish to discuss things with Jewish students, wish to hear our views, wish to speak to us. I have two kind of around this. I have two elements I'd like to work on. First of all, I will commit that these delegations, I think sometimes they aren't always the most diverse and can sometimes be slightly arbitrary. At least 50% of students invited in these delegations will be women plus. Not necessarily the kind of 50% you see in the photo, because there are obviously factors as to why people may or may not be able to come. But they will be based on the invite list will be 50% at least women's plus. The other thing is, and this kind of ties into my amendment to the National Council, where we're bringing in regional representatives. I'd like to see more of these where we reach out to devolved parliaments, whether that's in Scotland, Scotland, Scottish JSOCs, I know last year, and I think to some extent the year before, have done a lot of work on this already. But I'd like to see us as UJS reaching out to Scottish, Welsh, and Irish assemblies and kind of having similar things, not just in London.
Samantha?
I think with political engagement, sorry about that. It's very important that we have that all Jewish students on various campuses have access to this. And I mean, in terms of smaller JSOCs being able to have the same amount of speakers and have the same events that can therefore allow for them to be able to engage more in UJS in a fun way. I think enhancing student experience is incredible, and allowing for voices of a variety of different students to be platformed is an incredible way to do this. One part of my manifesto is to create a UJS national collective, which would be a set of identity networks where individuals who share similar experiences can come together, they can collaborate, and they can work with UJS to provide events and provide speakers and provide engagement for things that will, again, encourage dialogue and spark new information that perhaps we didn't know before. And that's one of the things that's so important, is the fact that UJS is a diverse spectrum of Jewish students, and all their voices need to be heard. And until we've done that to a certain extent, our political engagement won't be enough. We always have to keep improving that to make sure that as many voices can get engaged and should get engaged, to foster collaboration, communication, and that will optimize UJS towards wider communities as well.
Thank you. In January, many of you will have seen that Rebecca Tuck KC released a report into the National Union of Students, which found that NUS had been a hostile environment for Jewish students since at least 2005. Since then, UJS has been working with NUS to ensure that anti-Semitism in the student movement can be rooted. Shall I start again, Sammy?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Cut off halfway through.
So in January 2023, Rebecca Tuck KC released a report into the National Union of Students, which found that NUS has been a hostile environment for Jewish students since at least 2005. Since then, UJS has been working with NUS to root out anti-Semitism in the student movements. How can UJS continue to hold NUS to account in combating anti-Semitism in the student movement? Starting with Josh.
So there's two elements to this. The first one I've been doing particularly this year, I was elected onto the National Scrutiny Council of the NUS. It was effectively, our job is, as it sounds, to oversee and to scrutinize the work of the NUS and its officers, which has been especially important since the Tuck report. For example, the recent meeting, which was postponed for reasons beyond anyone's control, it has been one of the minutes that I put forwards was to discuss the NUS's response to the 7th of October and to the war. And I have to say, I've already seen massive improvement in terms of the way they've responded. When I've spoken to other NUS officers, especially other Jewish NUS officers, it's almost heartwarming to see that they've put out something which I can't imagine they would have put out a couple of years ago. So in terms of the way I would do that, I have experience of that. That's something I've done already. Oversight is also something I've done in other roles, including the UJS National Council. I think there's another element of it as well, which is passing on some of that responsibility and some of that power to Jewish students. I want to engage as many Jewish students as possible to become delegates for NUS. I know Samantha, congratulations, just won her election in Leeds. I want to see more. I want to see Jewish students engaging as much as possible in a space which UJS and various other stakeholder groups have worked really hard to make safer for Jews now. And I think it's our job to both encourage it as much as possible and then support those delegates, support the Jews putting their foot forward to begin inhabiting these spaces again, and support them as much as possible.
Thank you. I think Sammy has lost connection, but Samantha, you're next anyway.
That her Wi-Fi cut out. So one thing, as Josh mentioned, I was recently elected as an NUS delegate, which is very exciting, and I'm very proud of that achievement. And I'm ready to go to NUS conference to platform myself as a Jewish individual to represent Jewish students and to speak on behalf of what's been happening and to hold NUS account. One thing that really upset me was why were no other Jewish students at my uni? Why did none of them decide to also run to be an NUS delegate? I think that's the question that we really have to focus on. How many students really understand what NUS is, what happened at NUS, how we can hold NUS accountable, and to encourage that collaboration within JSOCs, to encourage that dialogue, to really get JSOCs and Jewish students understanding the issues at hand, and how having more Jewish students involved and having that diverse range of students on a board such as NUS delegates can help improve JSOCs, can help improve UJS, and can help encourage an inclusive community, not just within JSOCs, but on a wider scale on campus, providing a safe space. So I think that's one thing that I really want to focus on is the why, the how can we get more Jewish students to consider applying to be an NUS delegate, or to consider what NUS does and how, and foster conversations regarding NUS.
Thank you. Sammy is next, but I think her Wi-Fi might have cut out with very bad timing. I think in the interest of brilliant, Sammy is back. Just connecting to audio.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Is your camera working?
Just cut out my whole. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, it cut out for our whole house. That was a nightmare. Anyways.
No problem. So Josh and Samantha have gone. Do you need me to repeat the question, Sammy?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Of course. So in January 2023, Rebecca Tuck KC released a report into the National Union of Students, which found that NUS has been a hostile environment for Jewish students since at least 2005. Since then, UJS has been working with NUS to best root out anti-Semitism in the student movement, but of course there is still more to do. How can UJS best continue to hold NUS to account in combating anti-Semitism in the student movement?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously they've already got this action plan in place to go ahead and be completed in December 2024 to tackle anti-Semitism within NUS. However, whilst they have already started to show improvement and this is starting to work, the progress can't just stop in 2024. That's not good enough. So I want to try, and I have it in my manifesto, to try and come up with a continued roadmap to ensure that there is continuity in this improvement and allow us to hold them account. So I really want to work with them and work with getting more Jewish students to be NUS delegates, and work together with the delegates who are Jewish students and with NUS to have a continued.
I think Sammy's Wi-Fi may have cut out again. We're gonna pause for 1 minute while Sammy comes back in the interest of fairness. For people on Facebook Live right now, I will repeat what I said at the beginning, just to reintroduce myself and the candidates. This is debate for the UJS presidential elections 2024 to 2025. This is debate number 2. Debate number 1 focused on UJS's structure, peer leadership and representation. This is debate number 2, focusing on Israel engagement, combating anti-Semitism and campaigning issues. Voting is now open. Every Jewish student who has signed up to the UJS website with a graduation year, university and email address should have received a voting link. If you have not received a voting link, go to ujs.org.uk/join or email democracy@ujs.org.uk. Voting is open and will be open until next Thursday. That's Thursday, 7th of December at 11:59. So please do go and vote and show your support to one of these three candidates. Sammy, I can see your back. Do you want to finish your answer to the question?
Yeah, sorry, I'm now hotspotted and hopefully this is going to work. Did you get any of it or none of what I said?
We got, I'd say, about a minute or so of what you said.
Okay, I'll just try and go again and hope I've not repeated myself too much. But yeah, like as I was saying, hopefully you heard, I'm not sure. But like their plan that they've created to tackle anti-Semitism is supposed to be completed in December 2024. And like whilst they're showing improvement, the progress can't just like stop in December and like that be them and they're like, yeah, we've done it, that's all we need to do. So part of my manifesto is to come up with a continued roadmap with NUS, working to push more Jewish students. Like we've already got loads of amazing people going for to our NUS delegates, but pushing more Jewish students to be part of the team to help improve this so that more Jewish voices are being heard, and work with NUS and the delegates to come up with this continued roadmap to ensure that it's a continued plan. And like we continuously are seeing improvement. It can't just stop there. They need to be held to account. And having this roadmap will allow clear accountability to NUS and like on their like how they tackle anti-Semitism and how they become an environment that is welcoming for Jewish students. So I think that's just really important to like keep them going. Like it can't just stop next December.
Thank you. Our next question is when there is an incident of anti-Semitism on campus, UJS of course works with a Jewish society to best make sure that this incident of anti-Semitism can be campaigned against. How do you think the UJS JSOC relationship should go in responding to an incident of anti-Semitism, balancing UJS's expertise with a JSOC's experience on the ground? Starting with Samantha.
I think it's really, really crucial that there is a pre-formed, and this is more a proactive stance, but before anything happens, before uni starts, there's already a grounded, good and healthy relationship formed between the JSOC and UJS through continued dialogue between the JSOC and their sabbatical officer, between the JSOC and their president when needed, to ensure that when an incident does happen, there is an easy way to communicate between the two people. I think it's really important to establish resources that can be used for JSOCs and also the incredible other organizations that exist and collaborating with them to make sure that JSOCs have access to this. So for example, making sure that Jewish students in the UK have access to CST, but also ensuring that students in Ireland who might not have CST also have access to safety and security networks when necessary, and making sure that Jewish students there is a continued dialogue between the JSOC and UJS. One thing that I want to establish is an office hour between SABs and their JSOC, so that if an issue does happen or you just want to have a quick little chat with your SAB, there is an easy way for you to do that. And it's not just open for the JSOC committee, it would also be open for a Jewish student in case they have a concern that they maybe don't want to raise with their JSOC. So it's all about communication from the get-go. And by having that, it will make communications when an incident does arise, hopefully it doesn't, that there will be a way to communicate efficiently at that stage.
Sammy?
Yeah, so I think that there's a balance with it. Like UJS offer JSOC committees like the most incredible support, and I'd want to continue that. And I think there's a balance between UJS telling like JSOCs how to deal with it and JSOCs having their own like idea. Like we have it in Durham, we like have had some cases and we've spoken it through with like Guy, with Matty, like, and we speak it through and we tell them what we think and they tell us what they think, and we work together to make like sure that we're all on the same page and we're dealing it with a way that like me and my exec feel most comfortable and like the way to best suit it. So I think firstly that, and like having an open dialogue, having conversation and having that. I also think being really proactive with situations like that, like this. So having plans in place, having relationships in place already. Alongside this, I want to create welfare training for JSOC committees so that like a member of a JSOC committee has training already on like through Jamie, Samaritans, Nightline, like through external organizations on how to be a good shoulder to cry on, how to be an active listener, how to like deal with anything that comes to, because whilst like as JSOC committees we pass a lot of like concerns on to UJS, it's still something that you take on. And I think making sure that JSOC committees welfare is really like forefront and like there from the get-go, and like making sure welfare needs are met whilst then dealing with it together, and like having it as a really collaborative role where if like they feel comfortable going and speaking and sorting it with just like a bit of advice before from them, that's fine. But if they want us to come up and sit with them or go in and deal with it like by their side, that is also okay. It's about making sure that the JSOC committee and the people in the university who are being affected by this are thought of first, and the way they want to deal with it is our priority, and we can change our plans to best suit them. It's like their needs come first. Like it's not about what we think like it's our way or the highway. It's like about working to make sure it's a collaborative decision at the end of the day.
Josh?
So when it comes to the kind of general dynamic between sort of UJS and JSOCs, it's a very careful dynamic, and it's one that I think actually UJS gets right in a way that a lot of other organizations don't, which is JSOCs are not just kind of a branch of UJS. UJS is there to support JSOCs, but not to necessarily dictate to them what they should do. When it comes to campaigns, often we can have a slightly closer, as in we being UJS, can have a slightly closer relationship, or can kind of have a slightly harder guiding hand, simply because that's where our experience lies. But I think we also need to be very careful that fundamentally one of our core values is peer leadership. It's fundamentally down to the JSOCs to make these decisions and to sort of build this experience, because the fact is a lot of our best Jewish politicians, a lot of our best Jewish public figures, be it sort of, you know, the late Rabbi Sachs or Lord Mendelssohn, I know I've just mentioned two lords there, but they cut their teeth in JSOCs, they cut their teeth doing Jewish activism at university. And so it's important that while UJS has a lot of that experience, and especially the campaign teams of the last years have been amazing, it's that's there for guidance, not dictating to JSOCs what they should necessarily do.
Thank you. My next question from a member of the audience: how will you ensure smaller JSOCs have access to adequate resources to tackle anti-Semitism best? Starting with Sammy.
Yeah, so I think it's about like being proactive with it. So UJS having before the year starts, like a guide and like a pack ready for them of how to best support them. So through the welfare training that I've spoken about, through guides to dealing with anti-Semitism, having plans in place already so that they know the support is there from the get-go is firstly really important. Secondly, I think there's a challenge with it. Like I think I spoke about it a bit in the last one, that like in Durham, we don't have a close by Jewish community. We don't have someone to lean on. So I think building relationships with their SABs in like more remote and smaller JSOCs is really important, but also building connections and like pushing like with the chaplaincy in Scotland and in the Northeast, I think pushing them to work together and like helping make sure that their chaplaincy know that they need to be there for that JSOC and for the Jewish students. And like it's not about when it happens, it's like a free thought. Everything's like really being proactive so that if something happens, you know they're there. However, I know that there's some universities that don't have a chaplaincy. They don't have that, and they also don't have the outward Jewish community that like similarly to Durham. And I think like pushing the SUs like and working with them to make sure like they're trained in anti-Semitism awareness, they know what to do, and making sure like helping build and foster relationships between JSOC communities and Jewish students and their SU representatives are really important. And I think UJS has like a huge like part to like play with that. So like making sure that whilst we're meeting with these JSOC committees before and we're giving them these pets, we're giving them the welfare guidelines, but also helping connect them and like introduce them and work with them, and like focusing on how we can build connections within the university. Because like say in Ireland, like it's like further away from like hard if something happens the next day for them to get straight out there. Like as much as like we all wish like we could jump on a plane every day, that's hard. So making sure that they have someone out there and they have a connection out there already, I think is so important, so that if something was to happen, they immediately have someone there, as well as having that connection with their SAB officer. I think like building and helping foster relationships within the university community is really important.
Josh?
Sorry. So here I want to highlight two of my big manifesto promises, which are specifically targeted at small JSOCs and especially remote JSOCs, which I think somewhat come into this as well. Something that's happened, I think, over the last year, maybe longer, informally within UJS, I'd want to formalize, which is having a SAB who specifically comes from a small JSOC and is assigned to particular small and growing JSOCs. This would be particularly important because, for example, when it comes to a campaigns issue, when it comes to fighting anti-Semitism, that generally the way UJS deals with campaigns issues and deals with fighting anti-Semitic incidents on campus is it's collaborative between the committee, whether that's the president, campaigns officer within the committee, that university's SAB, in this case it would be the small JSOC SAB, and the campaigns team. So that way, even if the campaigns officers are from a bigger JSOC, might not be so used to the challenges of the small JSOC, they've got the kind of small JSOC SAB in that office, who knows what it's like that year specifically because they've been assigned for that SAB and knows what it's like in other small JSOCs. The other thing I have, which again is part of this kind of more ongoing move to kind of connect small JSOCs more to UJS, is my small and remote JSOC advisory group, which will meet at least once a term, will be made up of members of all the various different small and remote JSOCs, and will mean that even before an incident happens, we have our finger on the pulse of the challenges and the ways we can help small JSOCs with everything, but in particular fighting anti-Semitism in this case.
Samantha?
I think each individual JSOC, each small and remote JSOC, each growing JSOC has a unique set of challenges, and it's about actively listening to what these JSOCs need, what they want, and seeing if it is something that is accessible, and working with them to figure out what works, what doesn't, how best UJS can work with them, how best they can work with UJS. It's again a collaborative connection between UJS and the small JSOCs. I think it's really important to have JSOC training, to have these formats and plans in place where we can engage with how their JSOCs run, making sure that the events that can be put on, the resources that can be provided work best for that JSOC, because that works best with that JSOC. Again, collaboration and figuring out ways in which these smaller JSOCs can connect with other JSOCs, whether it is something like they have a chaplain connecting to the chaplain, whether there are local Jewish communities in that area. Again, each JSOC is unique, so not every JSOC will have the same resources, and it's about working with them to find out what those resources are and how best we can manage and find them together, because it's a collaborative effort to working with what these JSOCs actually need and facilitating that. Again, equitable access to CST training, making sure that CST training is provided in a space where it is accessible to attend, especially if they are a remote JSOC or a smaller JSOC. But also, again, making sure that there's training for students who, CST doesn't necessarily exist in the region that they're in, whether that's in Ireland, and ensuring that there is access to security, safety, finding the resources that these JSOCs need, and working together to foster that inclusive space.
Thank you. Our last question on campaigns and anti-Semitism. 7th of October, just 8 weeks ago, Hamas unleashed a brutal massacre onto Israeli civilians. Since then, as we all know, campuses have increasingly become places where Jewish students are fearful. How would you change this? And specifically, what's one campaign that you would do if there was only one campaign we would do to change the current atmosphere on campus? Starting with Josh.
Right. As in, if we had to strip back to one campaign, or adding one campaign to what we already do?
If you could add in one campaign.
Okay.
A new campaign.
So it's something I've put a lot more sort of broader thoughts into. So it's something you can kind of have a look at my manifesto and my Instagram, where I've got a kind of policy focus on this. The one campaign I'd put, if I could only add one more campaign, it's something I mentioned last hustings, and it's something quite difficult to do, but I think it's something that's really integral, difficult to do, especially at the moment. Interfaith relations on campus, they've taken a big hit. But I've seen firsthand, and I've heard when speaking to other kind of interfaith officers and presidents, how rebuilding kind of interfaith spaces and spaces where these conversations can be had, even if they're sometimes difficult conversations, can make campuses a lot safer for Jewish students in the long term. Whether that's having, when you've got your, a couple of years ago, unfortunately they've broken down recently in Nottingham, but a couple of years ago, when we had a much better relationship with the ISOC, with the PALSOC in Nottingham, they would run speakers by us. They would make sure to make sure that we were okay with them, and they weren't people that had been known to preach hateful stuff towards us. And that was, this time last year when I was dealing with ISOC bringing in someone who renowned for sort of homophobic, racist, anti-Semitic views. You just couldn't quite imagine that. And I think we need to rebuild that, and we need to rebuild those relationships, not just because of the perk I mentioned, but also because by working together, these groups also face their own unique kind of racism too. And by working together, we can all deal with fighting various forms of racism on campus, as well as anti-Semitism.
Samantha?
Yeah, since October 7, there's been a deafening silence from global feminist organizations to recognize or speak out against the sexual violence inflicted on Israeli civilians by Hamas. A campaign that is quite close to my heart that I'd really like to explore and establish is that of intersectionality of discrimination reflecting anti-Semitism. How anti-Semitism can affect individuals differently, and how that manifests itself onto campus life. There are so many Jewish women currently, both on campus and beyond, that feel scared or silenced and feel as though they cannot speak out against their perpetrators, and feel that they'll be ignored, especially from other feminist societies on campus, from other feminist organizations, from the UN. The 25th of November marked the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Now, this is supposed to follow 16 days of activism and campaigning for governments worldwide to invest in gender-based violence prevention. One thing that I've noticed is that hasn't really been done, speaking out about Israel or speaking out specifically about Jewish women. So one thing that I want to do with my campaign is I want to ensure that women are present, Jewish women specifically, are present in these important conversations reflecting our Jewish community, working collaboratively to respect, represent, and advocate for all women. It's disappointing to hear internationally by feminist and women organizations that they've chosen to remain silent. And I think it's really important to form collaborations with the feminist organizations on campus to foster that safe space where Jewish women feel like they can speak up and talk about what's happened to them. So I think I'd work with Jewish Women's Aid to establish bespoke resources specifically for university students, and I'd recognise the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women within UJS and advocate during those 16 days.
Sammy?
Yeah, so I think the main campaign I would run, I think the other two have said are equally as important. But one I would really push and promote is for working with SUs, pro-vice chancellors, other groups to celebrate diversity and interfaith and open up those conversations. So pushing the SUs to do the anti-Semitism awareness training, and then being able to have these open conversations. We've been doing it in Durham, where we meet once a week at first, and now it's every other week. we've been meeting with our Pro-Vice Chancellor to discuss how can they support Jewish students and how can we speak out. And since then, we've now met with the president of the Islamic Society. We're running football events with Arab Society and Islamic Society. We're doing all these events together, and we're like showing that whilst this is all going on, and whilst Islamophobia and anti-Semitism is on the rise, we can all stand together in unity. And so I think I'd really like promote a campaign about community, but with like unity in bold. So it's like, how can we all like come together? And I think like with that, like one of my points on my manifesto is about like these Tikkun Olam days, where it would be to celebrate diversity and interfaith. Like, how can we bring people together to like do like such core Jewish value of Tikkun Olam? So I think like opening dialogue and like having conversations with people high up in university and how they can actually support students, because we're not seeing it, and like members of like JSOC haven't been seeing what like these like big like the university are saying. They don't see that. They only the JSOC committee, but pushing them and working with them to have a campaign where they come and they speak is so important. And it's something we've been doing in Durham. So we've had the Pro-Vice Chancellor come to Friday night dinner. We've got the SU president coming, and they're showing their faces. So it's all a campaign about like how we can come together. Like our Interfaith Friday night dinner in Durham was the biggest one yet, because we all came together in unity as like one big Durham community to like stand up against anti-Semitism, against Islamophobia, against racism.
Thank you. We're going to finish with 3 quickfire questions, or more quickfire questions, before moving on to closing statements. For these questions, please do keep your answers short. The first question is, what's one thing in your manifesto that you think would make the most people vote for you? What's one thing that you want to shout about from your manifesto? Starting with Samantha.
That's a great question. I love every single little bit about my manifesto, but if I had to pick one that I thought would get people to vote for me, is facilitating in-person initiatives, connecting students through what they love, which could be enhancing student sports, collaborating with theatre, just celebrating our cultural identity and fostering a space where people can advocate for what they love, share what they love, and promote events that celebrate that is so important. And it's what so many Jewish students want to see, and they really want to be able to celebrate what they love with other Jewish students. And I think that that's a really important part of UJS and JSOCs.
Sammy.
Yeah, I think my female empowerment network, I just think it's so important. Like, I think the past 2 years and the past 20 years, we've missed out on so many strong female Jewish voices. And I think it's so important. And like, it's something that anytime I tell people about, like, I just start smiling, because like the idea of having it out there and having it be something that like I introduce just makes me so happy to celebrate these like strong female Jewish voices that like often go like under the radar and unheard. Like, I just think it's so important. Yeah.
And Josh.
As much as my inner governance nerd would love to say my accountability structures, I have to say it's my push for genuine, ambitious cross-communalism, cross-communal events, leadership events, educational events, social events, because I think by definition, this is reaching out to as many Jewish students as possible and celebrating our Jewish diversity. And so, of course, I think this will appeal to the most Jewish students possible.
Thank you. Next, what's the thing that you've done that got you in the most trouble? Starting with Sammy.
I was a goody two-shoes at school, and I went to a non-Jewish school, and I decided to miss chapel service one Monday, and it was awful. Like, I got caught, I had a lunchtime detention, I had to write an apology to the reverend of my school, and I told him I was really looking forward to the next chapel service, and thank you for all the support with JSOC. But I've never felt more guilty, and I literally stood in the deputy head teacher's office just sobbing about the fact I'd missed one chapel. But yeah, that's it.
Josh.
Sorry, I couldn't resist this. I have to admit that when I was a child, there used to be these. I used to grow up in the countryside, and there used to be these big fields of wheat, and I'd remember. Sorry. I'd run through the fields of wheat, and it would annoy all the farmers.
Samantha.
I'm like really struggling to think. I'm like the same as Sammy, like I've never got a detention or a bad note or anything like that. But I think the worst thing I've done is I let my dog, I left the front door open. My dog ran out, escaped, went into my next door neighbor's house and peed on their stairs. Not the best thing that happened, but oopsies.
My last hard-hitting question. If you were an animal, which one would you be and why? Starting with Josh.
Oh, okay. This one's tricky. A monkey. It's my favorite animal. Sorry, you said quick fire. I can't think of much more than that.
That is indeed quick fire. Samantha.
A golden retriever because they're loyal, friendly, and they always have a smile on their face.
Sammy.
I like little yappy puppy. I've got one myself, and everyone says, people say you look like your dog, but you don't look like Tess. You just are the same person, and your personality is the same. Because I just like jump around a bit, and like I'm quite yappy a lot of the time. So yeah.
Perfect. So we're now going to move on to our closing statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute to make these closing statements. We'll be going in reverse order of your opening statements. So we'll be starting with Sammy. You have 1 minute.
From going to a non-Jewish school to Durham with a small Jewish community, I've always had to fight for mine and other Jewish students' voices. I've created safe and supportive environments for Jewish students. I've told you about how I met with Islamic Society and we're fostering more interfaith and diversity. I've told you how I pushed the SU to sign the pledge, which only 1 in 5 universities signed. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism is at the forefront of many students' minds right now, and I've told you how I want to deliver anti-Semitism awareness training to at least 100 student unions across the country, so that they're equipped to deal with these anti-Semitic instances when they arise. I believe that UJS can do a better job of advocating for Jewish students, which is why I want to restructure the sabbatical officer, bringing back Israel engagement officer, as well as introducing the female empowerment officer. My plans for welfare training of committees, pushing NUS to ensure that the important work they're doing to fight anti-Semitism isn't lost, the Kahila magazine, or any other points on my manifesto, I really think that I have the best experience for the job.
Sorry. Samantha.
From the age of 7, when I was interviewed by CNN about the importance of a Jewish American girl doll, to right now as I stand to be your next UJS president, I have always expressed my love for my identity and have educated individuals on the values I bring as a Jewish woman. By enhancing student opportunity, optimizing UJ operations, and ensuring proactive advocacy, I will make UJS a place where every voice is listened to, acknowledged, and I will place you back at the heart of it all. I firmly believe in the transformative power of a strong, supportive community. Together, we can create an environment where every voice is heard, every identity is respected, and every challenge is met with collective strength and resilience. Together, we can build a UJS that reflects the rich tapestry of our Jewish identity and celebrate it.
Thank you. And lastly, Josh.
So the topics today have not been the lightest conversation. They wouldn't usually, but especially this year. I wanted to share something I helped run on campus recently. So 2 weeks on Thursday, 2 weeks ago, we had a vile protest on campus. There were calls for violence against students. And effectively on that day, groups at this protest attempted to make campus an unsafe space for Jews. We had a whole conversation within the committee as to what we were going to do, how we were going to deal with it. I argued very firmly against any kind of counter-protest. And instead, what we did was we showed up after that Shabbat on a Saturday night, and we had a communal Havdalah with a day, 2 days notice. More than 60 Jewish students from across the various spectra on Nottingham campus showed up and celebrated being proudly Jewish.
Thank you very much, everyone. That is the end of our second debate. Please do come back on Sunday for our third presidential debate and our final presidential debate, which will be on cross-communalism, UJS programming, and wider developments. You have until Thursday, December the 7th at 11:59 p.m. to vote for your next UJS president, who will be starting at the start of next academic year, 24 to 25. Please do go and vote. It is the most incredible opportunity to make your voice heard. If you have not received a voting link in your email, check your spam folder and then go to ujs.org.uk/join. That is ujs.org.uk/join. Sign up with your name, your email address, your graduation year, and your university, and you will be sent your voting links to make sure that you are able to input into the leader of your union. So do go and vote, and thank you all to all three candidates for coming today. And thank you. That is the end of our second debate.